My name is Father Andrew, and I am a Roman Catholic priest. After growing up on a ranch in northeast Wyoming, I went to college to be a software engineer, but God had other plans for me. He called me into seminary, and after studying theology and growing in my spiritual life for 6 years, I was ordained a priest for the Diocese of Cheyenne in May of 2016. I am the Roman Catholic priest.
Hello, and welcome again to another episode of The Roman Catholic Priest. My name is Father Andrew Kinstetter, and I have a special guest with me here today. He is a classmate and a very close friend of mine. He is also a transitional deacon assigned here at St. Stephen's Indian Mission with us. His name is Deacon Bryce Lungren. How you doing, Bryce?
Doing great, Father Andrew. Thank you for having me as your guest this morning. It's an honor. And it's an honor to be here at St. Stephen's. What a great gift that's been for both of us.
Absolutely.
A gift that keeps on giving, as you will.
Yeah, amen.
Amen.
So our goal with this particular episode today is we want to share Bryce's story with you all. There's something particularly captivating about stories. In fact, the Bible, our story, salvation history, is all one big love story between God and man. And so I think there's a particular power in stories, which is why in the first episode of my podcast, I shared with you my story, at least up until this point. It's ongoing. And today we want to share Bryce's story and how he ended up here, how God is working in his life. So here we go.
Take it away. Well, I love that theme about stories, because life really is a story. And one of our goals is to tap into our own story, because we all have a story, and a story that keeps unfolding before our eyes. So mine, I'm looking back from the perspective of being assigned here to St. Stephen's and the windy yet perfect road that it took to get here.
God makes straight with crooked lines.
As they say, yes. But I want to phrase it in this way. Last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I went back home to Worland, Wyoming. It's about 90 miles down the river from here, where I grew up, where I spent my first 18 years of my life. I went back there to vote and to visit my family, and then to come on back up. Just a pretty quick trip. But while I was down there, I wanted to pick up my old hat rack that I had down there to bring up and put on my wall here. And so I grabbed it, and as I was putting it in the car, I realized there's a lot more to this than just merely bringing an item from home back up here. And what I realized, that hat rack was given me by my parents when I was probably, 13, 14 years old, and I put it in my house in Worland, and then I never moved it. Even as I moved up to Montana. I worked up in Montana and was associated with Montana for the latter 18 years of my life. And my story as it unfolds is that I made it back home to Wyoming. And as I was bringing that hat rack, put it in my car, and I brought it up here, and I hung it on the wall, and I put my hat on it, I finally realized that I have found a place to hang my hat. And that's no small matter. And St. Stephen's has been a tremendous gift to me, and this journey of getting here has been a great gift. Not an easy road, but a beautiful one. And so that's where I'm looking right now. I've found a place to hang my hat, and I'm letting the Lord unfold His will in my life a day at a time, and it's been a beautiful journey so far.
Well, it's been awesome to have you here. Mm-hmm. You've been a tremendous help, not only to the mission, but to me. And I mean, it's so completely unexpected. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I think we want to know. Like, how did you go from Worland to Montana? Mm-hmm. Then how did you hear the Lord calling you into seminary in Montana?
Yeah. And it's all part of His providence. It's the fun thing to look back the Lord does right straight with crooked lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no arguing with that, but it's good to see his handiwork in the midst of it, and just to recognize that in retrospect, so we can recognize his hand right in the midst of today. So yeah, just to jump into that, I was born and raised in Worland, Wyoming. Tremendous family, mother and father, 2 older brothers, lots of aunts and uncles. My grandparents lived right there. I had a great childhood growing up. It was not without its challenges by any means, but a wonderful foundation for faith and virtue, as I say. Graduated high school in 1998, and didn't really know where to go. Wasn't excited about school. I was really excited to be done with school. So I just kind of opened my heart to whatever, and it wasn't any, big, revelation as to where the Lord wanted me to go, but something clicked in my heart, and that was when an uncle of mine who lived in Helena, Montana, had a business that was growing, and he offered me work, and it just clicked in my heart. That's where I needed to go. I had no idea what I was jumping into, but I know I needed to go. So about 3 days after graduation, I loaded my motorcycle up in back of my pickup and hooked onto my camper and drove up to Helena, Montana with my parents and set up camp, as you will. I worked for my uncle there for about 7 years. He had a trailer sales business and a towing business at the time too. So I just did a lot of different jobs. I did a lot of fabricating in the shop, welding, and just mechanicking. Did a lot of wrecker driving, which is a pretty sweet treat for an 18-year-old to have 2 12,000-pound winches sitting right behind him and pulling trucks up out of the creek and stuff. That was amazing. But anyway, I learned a lot. I learned a lot just as a young man trying to find his way and maturing. But I also learned a tremendous amount about my faith, and it wasn't anything extraordinary. Probably one of the greatest gifts I can think of, and it's so simple, but I got up to Helena, and that first Sunday morning I woke up and I thought to myself, hey, I guess it's up to me whether I want to go to Mass or not. And I remember sitting there actually pondering that question. Growing up, we just went to church. It's what you did. It wasn't forced or anything, but it's what we did. But now I had the freedom, and I pondered that question. And before I even got done thinking about it, I heard a knock on the door, and my uncle was there, who was also my godfather, said, hey, let's go to church. Let's go to Mass. So I jumped in and went to Mass. He showed me the church, and that was it, There was no, after that, there was no him picking me up or going together and stuff. But that was a decisive moment in my life. If I would have made that decision, like many people do, unfortunately, to not go to Mass, and to just miss that step in such a crucial moment of your life, my whole world would be changed. I know it would. Because from that moment on, all I did was go to Mass on Sunday. But as I did, I started falling in love with the Lord. Yeah. I started recognizing there's more, there's something here. My heart started to stir and kind of long for the liturgy. And I didn't know what that meant, but I recognized the movement in my heart. So I went to Mass. I went to Mass every Sunday, and it was a high priority. I didn't miss. And about 2 years into that, it dawned on me, just out of the blue, for Lent, why not go to daily Mass? Ah, man, that was out of the blue, but another huge step in my walk with the Lord. That Lent I did. I made it a high priority. I just committed. I'm going to go to daily Mass, 7 o'clock, the Cathedral of St. Helena. Yep. I went to Mass, went to work, and it was huge in my life. I just really felt the closeness of the Lord in my life. Not just there, but then throughout my day. And that just awoke in me what I'd say was a continual conversation with God. And I would just go without my day, and I would just talk to him in my heart. And I knew he was real. I knew he was there. That translated into, more consistent prayer life, that I think this is an important step in that journey too, which is I began to, a few years, a year or two later, I began to journal. Like, I just had such eventful days that I just kind of wanted to record that. But as I did, then all of a sudden it became more of a conversation to God. I just wrote, all of a sudden I was talking to the Lord about my dreams, my hopes, my desires, my struggles. And it really became a prayer. And as far as journaling goes, it wasn't, I probably journaled for maybe 5 years or something, and then I quit, and I kind of pondered, why did I quit? But I think it's because I grew in maybe a little bit more of a formal prayer life, where I'd actually then just take time and mentally commune with the Lord and talk to Him about all the things I was writing down. I just talked to Him through prayer. And so journaling for me was an introduction into prayer, which is kind of where I'm at now. I mean, I don't journal much, but I do take time to pray. Mm-hmm. So those are my early years of my time in Helena. As far as growing in prayer and virtue, and growing in my walk with the Lord in those initial years.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can totally relate to prayer journals. I wrote a lot of them, especially in seminary, actually before seminary, when I was in a similar sort of position, trying to encounter the Lord and fall more in love with the Lord. But back to how did you go then from those 7 years, roughly?
Yeah.
With your uncle. Mm-hmm. You went from there.
Yeah.
You've wound up in seminary. You've wound up ordained. How did the Lord work through that in Helena and get you to apply for the Diocese of Helena?
Well, and even just a little bit more, take a step back or two to get me thinking vocationally.
Yeah.
I had my time in Helena, well, just in those early years of working, was great on a human level and on a spiritual level. But I think the one thing that really rattled my cage and got me thinking beyond just the present and more of an eternal perspective was 9/11.
Sure.
I was 21 years old, and everyone remembers that day for the most part, but it woke us up. It shook us from our kind of slumber to the reality that life is fragile. And I remember from that point on, I was just I want to do something with my life. I want to do something for the good. I want to do something for the greater glory of God ultimately, and to help build His kingdom on earth.
Did you feel fulfilled in the work that you were doing?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, there was no doubt there. My life was my life was great, except I hadn't landed that vocation. Dated off and on, but I still hadn't confirmed my vocation. So 9/11 shook me into kind of something. All right, let's make these years count. And I started thinking a little bit broader. I quit watching TV. The news drove me crazy on that particular tragedy in the world. And I quit watching TV, and that all that did was aid my prayer life. And that's no small matter. But I did start thinking bigger, and the Lord started asking more of me. And I really desired to go all in with God, like a really rich young man style, just sell everything I got and go all in. And so I started thinking like that, and eventually, I was kind of longing for more. Even though things were good, I started longing for more. Anyway, I went and talked to a priest there at the cathedral, good old Monsignor Kevin O'Neill, and he, before I could even kind of share my thoughts or what I was thinking, he's like, "You're called the priesthood." This is a no-brainer. He was on the phone, "Yeah, I got a guy here. Let's sign him up," that kind of thing. But it was really good. He got me in touch with kind of a pre-seminary program there at Carroll College that I could just kind of meet with some guys and talk. Well, I didn't even know what I was getting into. I just wanted to serve the Lord. But it did get me introduced to that kind of way of life. And so really, at the age of 25, really, I dated quite a bit. No spouse had come in my life, and life was good, but I didn't have any reason to say no to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I felt Him laid upon my heart to give it a shot. And so I spooled up my life in Helena for the most part. I spent a summer back home in Wyoming just doing some odds and ends, things I desired to do before kind of taking a step into no man's land. And then that fall of 2005, roughly, I entered Carroll College, just kind of on my own, initiative. I was kind of signed up with the Diocese in Helena, but I was just kind of tiptoeing into the water and just seeing what this is all about. Well, my greatest fears came true in that first year of college. Like, I hated school, and I had no idea why I was there. I didn't know what it meant to be a priest. I desired to serve the Lord, but I didn't know what it meant to be a priest. And therefore, the picture wasn't complete enough for me to really just go all in. All I really wanted to do there was find a little Catholic girl to kind of change my direction and get this matter settled, but I didn't. But yet the Lord understood that desire and knew that I needed to experience really true kind of spousal love before I was mature enough to really enter into seminary formation and ultimately, God willing, the priesthood. So I was going to school, and throughout that time, a friend that I'd been friends with for a long time came back into my life. We had been friends for a while, but as we kind of met up again, it was obviously there was more than friendship this time around. She was going to graduate school in Washington, and we just kind of passed through Helena. And anyway, and I really felt the Lord saying, there's maybe we're both ready to kind of enter into a relationship to some degree. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't really ready to give up on the priesthood, and so I just kind of put that at bay. But it was a struggle for me that first semester. And what really sealed the deal was when I got a call from her folks that said that they kind of knew that I was struggling a bit, and they just wanted to throw out the offer that they could use help calving their cows that winter up on their ranch outside of Great Falls. And if I was interested, the door was open. And it just clicked. It was like, fine, yes, Lord, this is what I desire more than anything, actually. Be married, to do the kind of work that I love and know how to do, and ultimately glorify you in the process. So I took that step, just went to one semester at Carroll College, and that was good enough for me. From there, I moved up to Great Falls, Montana, and I worked on a cattle ranch just outside of there on the Smith River for the next 2.5, 3 years or so. And in that time, I pursued marriage. We were formally engaged, and it was some of the funnest kind of times of my life. Every natural gift the Lord had given me, I felt I could exercise on the ranch, whether it was from working in the shop or working with the cows and farming, and just it was a lot of solitude. It was great, and I learned a lot. I certainly didn't go into that thing knowing it all by any means. I learned a tremendous amount while I was up there. But as far as our relationship went, it was good. It was really beautiful and chaste, but it was also a bit of a struggle for us, especially as we got engaged and started asking some bigger questions about how we're going to raise kids, religion and stuff. She was Lutheran and I was Catholic, and I didn't think it was that big a deal. My folks entered into their marriage that way, And my dad eventually, when I was growing up, joined the Catholic Church. But that didn't bother me until we started asking bigger questions. And then it was brought to my attention. So how do we, why does the Catholic Church teach the things she does? And I really had a hard time replying to that. So that kind of sent me on another journey as far as really discovering the Catholic Church in its fullness.
So how did you go from being engaged? How did you, I don't even know how to phrase it.
Shift that gear?
Yeah. How did you have a date set?
Yeah, I had a couple. I mean, we just couldn't, we were engaged for like a year and a half. We couldn't get that settled. And so that's, that the Lord used that in so many good ways. He showed me that real love is sacrificial. It's not all, roses and rainbows, right? There's give and take, and there's sacrifice, and there's struggle. But Christ gives us the ultimate example of his unconditional love of himself on the cross. And so it started clicking that there's more to love than just a fancy feeling.
Mm-hmm.
There's a steadfastness, there's a sacrifice, and that's what I desired. That's what everyone desires, is a love that you can give yourself to. And that's a spousal love. And I didn't see that in the priesthood, but it awoke in me the reality that just even human natural love is sacrificial. Anyway, so this all is kind of coming into image. Where we ended up with that, and it was such a good experience for me because it actually caused me to, like, all right, why does the church teach what she does? Like, why does she want you to raise your kids Catholic? Why does she want you to be open to life in all aspects of your in marriage and whatnot? And why, right? You know? So, well, I needed help in that. I'm not a reader, per se. I mean, and I needed some help in, like, learning my faith. And the Lord really gave me that when he tuned me into a local Catholic radio station there in Great Falls. And I started listening to that. It was basically EWTN radio. I started listening to that, and my heart was set on fire big time. I mean, I was out baling hay, and I remember just, like, stopping the tractor and just stepping outside and just, like, throwing my arms in the air, just like, I'm free. Like, I'm set free. I couldn't believe it. I was, in a sense, falling in love with the church. And it was amazing. I never expected it. What that showed me, two things, and as our relationship progressed, and is that I didn't love her unconditionally. She was not Catholic, and that's where the Lord had her. And it's not that I didn't really love her, but I was falling in love with the Catholic Church, and I wanted to raise her family Catholic. I wanted her to be Catholic. I mean, that's just not where the Lord had her. And it showed me there was something lacking in my overall love for her. But what it also showed me is that I love the church unconditionally, and I didn't quite know what that meant. But I could feel it in my heart. But as I grew more in my knowledge of the church, I also grew in my knowledge of the priesthood. And I came to understand the deeper meaning of celibacy. That the church, or the priest, actually marries the church in the same way as a husband marries his wife, and in the same way as Christ gave his life on the cross for his bride, the church. There is a spousal giving there. There's a spousal gift of self from the priest to the church. And that was the missing element that I didn't have early on when I discerned the priesthood. Once I started to kind of grab that image, I remember thinking in my heart, darn, I'd like a second crack at that. Just kind of thinking that. But I was committed to this relationship with her. So, okay, fast forward. Time up there was great. We were engaged, but I was kind of struggling. But I was growing in prayer life. I was catching Mass every weekend and daily Mass when I could. Yeah. And I was just really growing in prayer life. And I was praying one day, and it was honestly November 24th, 2007, about 8:30 in the morning, and I was praying on my knees, saying, Lord, I'll do whatever you ask. And he blew it open in a way I could not ignore, and in a way I can't describe. But I knew two things, that he was calling me to the priesthood, and then I also had to call off the relationship with her. That was a beautiful experience, a hard one, but beautiful. I stood up at that moment and was like, got it, Lord, okay, and got on the horn, made the calls, and sat down with her and her family and just said, the Lord's calling me, I got to go. And it was hard, but they understood. And, it wasn't like I packed my bags that next day and left. I had some obligations to them, got them through that next cabin season or helped them out. It was just such a fun experience up there. And we discerned it a little bit more because, that's fine and dandy, but, what's that actually look like? And so it took some discernment after that initial call, but in the end, I knew that I just had to set out into the deep and find out what all this was about. And I knew the Lord was with me, and I knew I could face my greatest fear, which is going to school. And I just knew in my heart, I knew what I had to do. So there I sat in Great Falls, which is a diocese unto itself, and I didn't know what step to take. Where do you go from here? I don't know where to serve, like Helena, Great Falls, Wyoming. Like, I don't know, Lord, how do you go about this? There's thought of some kind of religious orders, I don't know. But I couldn't ignore just the natural doors that opened, and a couple of those were super providential. A priest from Helena calling me out of the blue, just checking in on me, and just an opportune time, running into Bishop Thomas himself at a particular Mass in Great Falls, and told him my heart, and he said, I'll offer my Mass for you today. Anyway, and the doors just kept opening. Diocese of Helena, they'll send me out to college seminary. I just said, just jump on board and go. And my heart was very at peace with that. And so that's what I did. That fall of 2008, I entered first year college seminary out at Mount Angel Seminary, Benedictine Monastery out in Oregon. Those were 4 tender years with the Lord. Academics, it was just all one big picture there. It was a really beautiful experience. And I really grew in a deeper, more kind of contemplative prayer life, and the monastic setting just really aided in that, helped me enter into my studies, and it was a beautiful 4 years of my college seminary out there. At the end of those 4 years, it was time to transition into, I might call it major theology, the final 4 years of where you study more theology than philosophy. And the bishop at Helena at that time asked me to transfer down to Denver and to enter into seminary down there, which I was really excited about, get back a little bit closer to home. And Rocky Mountain culture and just a change of pace. I welcomed it. But I also say about this time, I started, kind of recognizing the deeper desire in my heart for home, for Wyoming. And it was present. I always kind of, when someone asks you where you're from or something, I say, well, I'm from Wyoming, but I'm studying for the Diocese of Helena. Yeah. And it was that was always the case. Ever since I left home, I longed to get back. But I never once questioned the providence of God in having me where I was, whether I was in Montana or school or what. So I just kept going, and there was definitely no hesitation in that. Entered down to Denver in 2012, I think, and that's where we met.
Yep.
And those were 4 good years as well. in a lot of ways, it awoke up a more natural side of me, I think, in the priesthood. You know, the priesthood's easy to be super lofty about, to just be like really idealistic, really imagining that things are, I don't know, ideal, honestly. Mm-hmm. And there's always imagining the cookie cutter priest, like, this is what the world needs. Bam, the guy's got all the answers, who prays, who, says the confessional. I mean, but the reality is the priesthood, I'm not a priest yet. The priesthood is a participation in the priesthood of Jesus Christ through our own humanity.
Amen.
And so, that started to become a little more real as I entered out of the monastery back into the real world. It wasn't quite fully, but I started, what's the priesthood going to look like on me? And I couldn't really manufacture this ideal image. It just wasn't fitting. We both had a great experience at IPF. It's a summer program put on by the Institute of Priestly Formation. Mm-hmm. Summer program on just spiritual formation for the priesthood. And in that, you really come to understand, I think we both did, that we are beloved children of God. No brainer, right? That's that's like foundational.
Yeah, but it's hard to connect the head knowledge of it with the heart.
Yeah. And so that was a big year for me, because I understood that not only does the Lord love me, which I knew that, but He loves me as the man He created me to be. And so I came out of there with the motto, the priest God wants me to be is the man He created me to be. And that just set my world on fire, because I know that man. He likes to weld. He likes to ride his bike, work on old trucks,
ride horses,
listen to country music, drink Coors Light, and just enjoy life on a natural level. That's the man the Lord's created me to be. And He wants to use that in the priesthood, and I want Him to. But I can't configure some image of the priesthood that's contrary to that.
Nobody can be the Superman priest. Mm-hmm. And we're not called to be.
Yeah.
But we all think we have to be.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the priesthood, but that's sainthood in general, right? I mean, we're all striving to be saints. And we're not all called to be Mother Teresa's or, Pope John Paul II. Oh, these are my heroes.
Right.
But, the husband, the wife, that's not their vocation. And so we all struggle. How does holiness look like on me, And so I would just say also, the saint God wants you to be is the man or woman He created you to be. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not easy, but it's not rocket science. So that was revolutionary for me. So I entered back into, I'd been in my third year of theology down in Denver, or second, whatever. And I just took off. The Lord opened a lot of doors for me. We gave me some opportunities to do some kind of hands-on construction projects. So we fixed up an old shop down in Denver, and we got into building some picnic tables for fundraisers, and just other woodworking projects, and a place to hang out, and just get back down to earth, really. All the while studying theology, growing in a prayer life, serving in the parishes, and just growing in human virtue the best we can. I mean, it was really a beautiful experience. But, okay, getting back to Wyoming's always kind of on my heart. How did I get here, right?
Right. So,
kept going through seminary, and I really did start to recognize there's a little bit more going on here with this Wyoming versus Montana thing. And I started to open my heart to that and ask some questions. But I wasn't confirmed that the Lord was calling me. I just thought maybe it was more of a
Homesickness?
whim. Yeah, homesickness maybe. I mean, I've always had that desire, that longing to come back home. I've tried forever to get back home. But I didn't feel the Lord's calling me. So just stay the course. And thanks be to God I did, really. But so I knocked on that door. It didn't look like it led anywhere, talking to the various people in charge of my formation. And they weren't convinced it was a call, nor was I, so I just stayed the course. In the spring of 2015, I was ordained a deacon for the Diocese of Helena. And that was a great gift. It allowed me to kind of enter into the more formal roles of the ministry, preaching and serving in a large capacity and stuff. But my heart really began to kind of flutter at that point. Like, something's not quite right. That last year of seminary is the hardest year, probably in my life, honestly. It was great. There was a lot of cool things that happened, but it was a big time struggle inside. There's something a little bit torn, and I kind of knew why, but I kind of didn't, and so I just stay the course. Let's just keep going, because I knew I was called to priesthood. I never questioned that, and so I just kept plowing forward. About Christmas of that year, anxiety really started to kind of creep its way into my life, and I was having trouble kind of thinking straight, and I was just kind of not myself, but yet doing what I had to do. So that last semester of seminary, it was more of a challenge to thrive. I could see something wasn't quite right with that picture, but there again, I didn't know what to do with it. So, every indicator said just keep going. So I petitioned the Diocese of Helena for priestly ordination and went forward and was about school got out, and I had a month in between there and ordination, and I really got struck with some hard-hitting anxiety and even depression, and I couldn't think straight, and I kind of come up with this saying since then, but you can't white knuckle love, like you can't force it. You can lead a heart to love, but you can't make it fall, as George Strait would say. And that's where I was. As hard as I tried, I just couldn't enter into fully priesthood for the Diocese of Helena. As much as I loved her, as much as I loved the people who supported me in so many ways, as much as I love Bishop Thomas and all my brother seminarians, the Lord was calling me elsewhere, and it was becoming evident that there's more to this than just cold feet. And so a week before priesthood ordination, I had to call her quits. I couldn't make it, and I called Bishop and said I called him from a hospital bed. Honestly, this got pretty serious, and I said I can't do it, and he said it's fine. I'm cool with that, and he said let's just postpone. Let's take our time and pray through this and see really what the Lord's asking. And he said one thing to me that just tells me of the caliber of that man. He said, it doesn't matter what we want. What matters is what God wants. And so that was how that all kind of came to a halt. And that was in the spring of 2016, so just 6-8 months ago. So, how did I get to St. Stephen's? Well, there was a little bit of relief in kind of finally putting the brakes on that runaway freight train. That I had time to discern, but then reality set in of like, you just kind of, I didn't get ordained. Like, what the heck just happened? Like, I just felt like I blew it all, and I kind of, really the anxiety and depression really kicked into high gear. But there were some major providential encounters. One was with the Bishop of Cheyenne, Bishop Paul Aitchen, who really played the role of Good Shepherd. When I came back to Worland after not getting ordained for Helena, I was really down, actually. I didn't quite know what the Lord was doing there, but I was there. He sat, and I really kind of felt like I abandoned the Lord in a particular way, and it was a pretty dark moment, probably one of the darkest of my life. About that time, he called up, Bishop Aitchen called up. He said, "Hey, I hear you didn't get ordained." It's like, yeah. He knew me, and I knew him fairly well. We were friends. He said, "I'd like to come see you." I said, "Well, I won't deny you that opportunity. It's a long drive from Cheyenne, but you're welcome to." And so he showed up at my folks' house on Father's Day, and that's no small matter. And he was just coming to just, hey, I got a man down. He's in my diocese. I got to check on him. That really tells the caliber of that man, who's now the Archbishop of Anchorage, Alaska. But he just came to the house. We just talked, and he's a good spiritual director, and he talked, and I opened it all up. I just said, I've been desiring to come home for a long time. And I don't know if that's the root of this whole deal, but it's been pervading for a lot of years. So he walked me through it and never said, "Hey, sign here," or anything like that. But he recognized that the Lord had placed that on my heart, and he also recognized that the Lord had placed that on his heart. And so he just said, that's between you and your bishop and whatnot. But what that did is it kind of allowed me to recognize that maybe the Lord is calling me home. And so the next few months, this past summer, I really took some time to pray into that. And part of that was just kind of getting in a good atmosphere where I could kind of pray, and neutral setting, if you will. And that's how I come up to St. Stephen's. You, Father Andrew, were assigned here. You're a good friend in seminary. And Father Jim Heiser was a former pastor of my hometown, so I knew him well. And so I came up just to visit a time or two. And I really felt at peace up here. And at one point I had some time, and I thought, I just need to spend, a few weeks up here and just retreat it and just figure out, just get back on my feet, listen to the voice of the Lord. And so I did that, and it was an amazing experience. It was an amazing experience on many levels, primarily on a human level, honestly. Like that, and that's the human and the spiritual are so intrinsically united that it's hard to distinguish between the two. And really, where that came to its kind of climax, if you will, was when I spent that 3 weeks up here, and I was, my friends from seminary would appreciate this. I was doing my no more thing. Had some time, so I went and planted my shovel in the yard, and I turned on some country music, and I grabbed a cold Coors Light, and I was sitting there roping my shovel handle, like most seminarians do.
Just you.
Just me. So anyway, I was just sitting there playing around, just kind of being at peace, and the neighbor, a good man that lives here at St. Stephen's on the grounds, come over, and we were shooting the breeze. He goes, "Oh, I see you can rope." I said, "Yeah, I can rope my shovel." And he said, "Well, I've got a colt in the corral that I need to get a halter on, and I can't even get close to it. Would you rope it for me?" I said, "Well, yeah." So I did. We got a halter on it. And then he started telling me about this horse that came wandering in. And he showed it to me. He's in the corral there, a young bay stud. And he said, "This horse just come wandering into to the mission here." He said it come in and jumped into some pastures that he had horses in with studs, and he said he kept getting worked over, getting in trouble, wandering here and there. And so finally I got a hold of him and I put him in the corral. Here he sits. I've had the various authorities come and look. He doesn't have a brand on him. And he said, and they say, he's yours. He's your responsibility. You got to do something with him. And so Ron is his name. He told me, he said, I need to get a halter on him, take him into town, get him cut, and then find a home for him. And he said, but I just don't have the time. So I said, well, I have the time. I don't necessarily have the experience, but I'll give it a whirl. And so that began my adventure with Chief, though, that young bay, who I named Chief. Various reasons, kind of an old family horse name. But boy, what a rewarding experience that was. I was telling a gal that just came here visiting, who's into horse training, and I told her about this horse that I was working with, and she said, "Oh, that's going to be so great. You're going to learn so much about yourself." I thought, whoa. But it's true. So, that's just been a fun experience. And I don't take all the credit myself by any means. I had a lot of help from Ron and his son-in-law Jeff, and then particularly another gal that here at church who's pretty savvy in horse training, Gail. And but anyway, long story short, worked with him, just sweet talked to him, really kind of took a pretty gentle approach with him, got a halter on him, took him into town, gilded him, and that's where it sat that in that 3 weeks that I was here. And but what that really showed me, just on a superhuman level, I mean, maybe superhuman, I don't know, but that the Lord is calling me home. Like, there's such peace in my heart being here and working with him, that and just imagining ministry here, and it just really all clicked. And it really showed me also some of my fears and anxieties were surrounded with letting go of Helena, whom I loved so much and felt I owed so much to. But if the Lord calls you, you have to answer. And he never calls us in a way that will compromise our freedom or our happiness. He calls in a way that enlivens us to become, the fullest men and women we can be. And so I recognized that all that was taking place in my life, but I still needed to hear it from the right people. So at the end of the 3 weeks that I spent here, I was pretty confirmed and convinced that the Lord is calling me home. And what that looks like, I don't know, but I knew I needed to take that step. So I went up to Montana, and I had an appointment with Bishop Thomas, and I just talked to him straight up. And he's a good man, and he recognized the conviction in my heart, and he just honestly gave me his blessing and said, "Godspeed you," and he allowed me to begin transferring down to the Diocese of Cheyenne, and discerning that on a formal basis, if the Lord is calling me home to serve here and to serve in the priesthood, and just that whole door. So that's basically where I sit now. He gave me that freedom, like a good father does for his children. Bishop Aitchen welcomed me down here, and in doing so also assigned me to serve at St. Stephen's, which I was really overjoyed by. I've been here now for a month and a half formally. It's been awesome. I'm surrounded by a lot of dirt, and that makes me happy.
So it's interesting to me, and a lot of what you said really resonates with me, particularly the priest God calls us to be is the man he created us to be. Mm-hmm. You loved working on the ranch up in Montana, welding, all that kind of stuff. You sort of had to give part of that up when you entered seminary. And what's cool for you here, you've turned your garage stall into a shop.
Yeah.
You're welding like crazy. You're working with horses.
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, you let it go, but God's given it back to you.
100-fold. I mean, that's his promise to us. Like, whatever you give up in my name for my glory, you will receive 100 times in this life and eternal life to boot. And that has rung true over and over again in my life. And it's in subtle ways, but profound ways as well. I was thinking when I came back on that drive from Montana back to Wyoming after I talked to Bishop Thomas, I'd much buttoned up anything I needed to up there. I didn't need to go back. But as I was coming back, man, there was a lot of peace in my heart. And I realized that I'm bringing to the Diocese of Cheyenne or the church in Wyoming, I'm not bringing just 8 years of seminary. I'm bringing 18 years of life experience in Montana, of formation that was given to me. My time in Helena working for my uncle, my time on the ranch in Great Falls, my schooling, all of that the Lord wants to use in priestly ministry. I don't know how, and that's up to him, and I have full confidence in him. That's really a beautiful part of actually going through that trial. That's what the great grace of that trial was. It was almost a necessary component to this, is that I trust in God's providence in a pretty profound way. And I'm in kind of a limbo state, even now that Bishop Aitchen has been called elsewhere. I'm kind of, just kind of in limbo. I mean, in a good spot, but it doesn't shake me. Like, I know the Lord's got this under control, and I just trust in him. I don't get too far ahead of myself. Try not to. I'm far from perfect. But I have a peace that he's got things right where he wants them. So, yeah, I bring home all my things that I love to do, along with the ministry I've been taught, preaching and baptizing and funerals and just serving the church with who I am, all I got. So yeah, the work goes on here. Still working with Chief, who now got saddle broke, and also we're breaking him to drive. We got a little sleigh that Father Andrew and I are working on, and we've got a big day set for December 26th, the Feast of St. Stephen's. We'll be having a celebration up here at the mission to commemorate, ultimately, God becoming man, taking on flesh, taking on dirt, Jesus Christ, the birth of Jesus Christ, who teaches us all how to be ourselves, how to be the saints he wants us to be, and how to be true children of God. He teaches us that. So to celebrate that, ultimately, to celebrate the life and virtue of St. Stephen, celebrate the great gift this mission is to so many people, us including, and just thanksgiving to God that we were able to be a part of that, and thanksgiving to all who make that possible. The benefactors, the foundation, Ron Mamet and his crew, who do so much to keep this thing going. So, yeah, it's just been a great gift, and you've benefited from that as well, as you've been a major role in my life in helping me discern all this. You've been indispensable. The Lord has given me every good gift necessary to more fully understand His will. But the one thing we've kind of tapped into, I think both you and I have, is our identity as citizens of the great state of Wyoming, right? Wyoming's called the cowboy state. Yeah. And whether you grew up on a ranch or even have a like in horses or not, it doesn't matter. I think there's a cowboy in all of us. And we've mentioned it before, but there's a lyric in a song with Tim McGraw that says, "We ride and never worry about the fall. I guess that's just the cowboy in us all." And it's true. It's particular truth for the people of Wyoming. There's the virtues that make up the Western way of life, the cowboy way of life, the simplicity, a certain amount of independence, healthy independence, harmony with nature, and just becoming that man, in our case, that we're really created to be. I think it personifies that in a particular way. So I feel like we've tapped into that a little bit, and working with the horses and just working around the place here is really brought that to fulfillment in a way. And it's cool to see what the Lord wants to do with that. And that'll come in time. Who knows, but I'm just thankful to be a part of it now. So going back to that first story, I feel like I found a place where I can hang my hat. Although I left that particular hat on the prairie last week as I was chasing a brand of Brumbies around, and they got the best of me. That's another story, but just another adventure of life on the mission of St. Stephen's.
Well, maybe we'll do a podcast on that. I want to add a particular perspective on this whole story of yours. First of all, it's been an honor and a privilege and a blessing for me to walk with you, and for you to walk with me. This has been truly, truly phenomenal for us both. But I want to just share this because I think it shows the complete providence of God in this whole situation. There's a particular grace here at St. Stephen's, which Bryce and I have both really benefited from, which has been completely surprising to me. So to kind of back up, I was ordained May 20th of just this past May. But before that, Bishop Aitchen had called me up to tell me where he was going to assign me as a newly ordained priest. And my expectations, as probably every newly ordained priest goes through, they kind of list where they think they might get sent. I expected one of the bigger parishes, Cheyenne, Casper, Sheridan. I did not at all expect St. Stephen's. St. Stephen's was the bottom of the list of expected places for me to go. Because in the past there had been only one priest here, not two. Plus it's on the Indian reservation, which just doesn't seem like it would be a traditional, typical starting place for a new priest. In fact, most everybody else would also agree with that sentiment. So the bishop called me up about Easter Monday and told me that he was assigning me to St. Stephen's Indian Mission with Father Jim. And I remember just being completely shocked and blown away by that. It was completely unexpected. And so I had to deal with that. I had to kind of let go of my own desires and my own expectations. And I truly tried to just make the best of it and give it my all. But it was a bit of a struggle for about a week as I kind of processed that. So point number one, like me coming here to St. Stephen's was completely and entirely unexpected. And so I came here on July 6th. And at that point, you were in Warland. I invited you down to help me move in. You came down and showed up in time to be late and not help me move in.
Yep.
But that whole situation, you wouldn't have come to St. Stephen's had I not been assigned to St. Stephen's, because I don't think you hardly even knew about the Indian Mission prior to this whole summer.
No.
And so then inviting you down and you having the experience that you've had here, specifically here, not just at a parish in Wyoming, but here. Mm-hmm. This is the only parish in Wyoming where there are grounds owned by the mission, where there are buffalo, where there are horses, mm-hmm. where there are the ability to weld, to build things, to, you know, the presence here is so unique in the diocese. So Providence is completely at work in sending me here, pulling you here, helping us both grow in our identities as me a priest, you as a transitional deacon, aiming towards priesthood. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't have happened had it not been here and the complete unexpectedness of the whole situation. Mm-hmm. So it's been phenomenal for me to see that all play out. Mm-hmm. And it's been an honor to be a part of how this has all played out. Yeah. Where it goes is up to Providence.
Lord only knows.
But it's just, it affirms the reality that there's a bigger plan.
Amen.
That God is the one who's conducting the orchestra and we're just instruments playing. Mm-hmm. You know, completely unexpected. And that's how God works. He is the God of the unexpected.
Sure.
And yet, if we follow Him and let go of our own selfishness and our own desires, if they're contrary to God's, mm-hmm. God blesses us and gives us grace and ultimately leads us to joy and fulfillment, which, not to say that we've both found it, but we're both on that road.
Feel like it, yeah.
You know, there's the typical ups and downs, but pervading joy, mm-hmm. which has been so cool to see in you and in myself, even as the ups and downs of the spiritual life come and go.
Yeah. Amen. It's well said. It's a story, right? And it's being written as we speak.
Yep.
And that's the fun of it, the adventure of it, is that we're able to kind of look back and see where the Lord's been and leading us, and gives us hope for the future. And but ultimately there's the element of trust and faith that He is true to His name, that He is our Father, and wants what's best for His children.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's fun. It's great. It's good to see this happen, and I do anticipate the priesthood. I pray that comes about, but I also have peace and confidence that that'll happen when it needs to. So we'll just let the Lord handle that. But that's the ultimate goal, is to be able to.
And to be a priest for the Diocese of Cheyenne is the goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I feel confirmed too, and the church herself will help me discern that. When is the right time and how to go about it. So, but yeah, I feel home. I have many generations of family here, of pioneers here, who've helped settle this land. And it's good to be home.
Well, it's good to have you home.
Amen.
Cool. Thanks, Bryce, for sharing your story. And
thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I hope that this inspires other people to recognize their own stories. Everyone's got a story. God is working in everyone's life very intimately, very particularly, and very personally. And so I would just invite all our listeners to tap into that and to recognize, even if you're going through a struggle, hang on. Just keep going. It's not without merit. It's not outside of God's providence. He's there. And He always brings us to greener pastures. So keep on keeping on, as they say.
We ride and never worry about the fall.
Guess that's just the cowboy in us all.
Amen.
Amen. So
if you would like to follow me, you can go to my website, RomanCatholicPriest.com. That's ROAMIN, CatholicPriest.com. There's a button on the homepage that says contact. You can send me an email, keep in touch that way through social media. All the typical things are all there on the homepage. So be sure to check us out there. And Deacon Bryce, we'll have you back on again, and we'll talk about who knows what at this point, but we'll do something.
Sounds good.
Cool. Until then, God bless you all.